Venezuelans rallied on Wednesday to mark 20 years of the popular victory against the 2002 coup. Russian President Vladimir Putin told the Arctic Council that his country will reshare its energy resources domestically and internationally. South Africa Health Department reports 259 deaths due to flooding in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On Wednesday, the people of Venezuela mobilized to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the popular victory against the 2002 coup d'etat. Political organizations and social movements marched for the 20th anniversary of the rescue of national dignity and to ratify the will of the Venezuelan people to be free, sovereign, and independent. The South American country also celebrates the Day of the Bolivarian Militia, which began in the popular mobilization in conjunction with the performance of loyal military who put an end to the coup of April 11, 2002. The act was headed by President Nicolas Maduro, who recalled the manipulation of the private media, which at that time did not achieve the expected goal, which was the overthrow of President Hugo Chavez.
20 years of the April Revolution, 20 years of the historic defeat of the coup against our people and against Comandante President Hugo Rafael Chavez Frias. The oligarchy believed, imperialists believed, that the Venezuelan people, that the Venezuelan military were going to be the kind of people who watched from afar, who watched the bulls from the sidelines, that the Venezuelans were going to be fooled again by the lies imposed by the media. They believed that the Venezuelans were going to chicken out, that they were going to fold their arms. And the people of Venezuela 20 years ago today gave a historic lesson to the national oligarchy, to imperialism, and to the world right.
In Colombia, the Constitutional Court upheld the indictment against former President Álvaro Uribe in the trial against him for alleged procedural fraud and bribery. The ratification by the High Court comes after unanimously denying an appeal filed by Uribe's attorney, alleging due to process violations and judicial bias. The decision to deny the legal instrument was supported by 9 justices of the full chamber of the Constitutional Court. After this measure, the process against the former Colombian president continues its course. Bolivia's legal team presented Wednesday its second round of arguments before the International Court of Justice at The Hague in the Netherlands for the use of the Silala River's waters. Attorney Gabriel Eckstein said that Chile had made a biased reading of the scientific evidence presented by Bolivia, while attorney Matías Furtó stressed that the Chilean claim before the International Court of Justice was premature and unjustified, and that Chile decided to cut off the bilateral conversations on the river. He also questioned the credibility of the Chilean reports, pointing out that scientists did not visit the Bolivian side of the river. A new hearing will be held Thursday for closing arguments. In Bolivia, Deputy Foreign Minister Freddy Mamani rejected the report on human rights issued by the United States government.
For respect for the sovereignty of countries and the self-determination of each one of them, and therefore categorically reject intrusion of third countries, as well as the unilateral report on human rights recently issued by the United States Department of State, which makes unfounded inferences and issues inappropriate valued judgments on the judicial process faced by Janine Áñez Chávez in the justice system of our country for her participation in the events that occurred in the political crisis.
Deputy Foreign Minister Mamani called the unilateral human rights reports issued by the U.S. State Department questionable.
That the unilateral reports of the United States pretend to be above other states and international organizations such as the United Nations and the Inter-American System, given that the United States is not even a signatory to the fundamental human rights treaties, such as the International Convention on the Protection of the Rights of Migrant Workers and Their Families, among other international instruments. In that sense, our country categorically rejects any unilateral report issued by the United States Department of State.
In Honduras, Security Secretary Ramon Savillon confirmed that the extradition of former President Juan Orlando Hernandez to the United States will take place between Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. On Wednesday, the Honduran Foreign Ministry received the resolution of the plenary of the Supreme Court of Justice that ratified the extradition of the former president, so now it only remains to make the delivery formalities with the Security Secretary, which, according to the official will, take place after the holidays for Holy Week. The 15 magistrates of the Supreme Court ratified last March 28th the extradition that was authorized on the 16th of the same month by a judge appointed to hear the request. Hernandez will be transferred to the United States, where he is requested by the justice system to be tried on 3 charges related to drug trafficking and the use of weapons. We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. On Wednesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin told the Arctic Council that his country will share its energy resources domestically and internationally. Vladimir Putin, during a meeting of the country's Arctic Council, assured that Russia will be able to increase oil, gas, and coal supplies to other regions of the world despite the coercive sanctions imposed by the West. The Russian president proposed to promote the development of transport corridors, such as the Northern Latitudinal Railway line, in view of the logistical difficulties caused by the unilateral measures imposed by the West to mobilize energy resources by land and sea. President Vladimir Putin also called on all states that are part of the Arctic to participate in the sustainable development of this region.
As a result of the actions of unfriendly countries, a number of transport and logistics chains have been disrupted. Some foreign companies do not fully or do not fulfill at all their contractual obligations. Of course, in the current situation, this creates for us certain difficulties, but we have all the resources and all the possibilities to quickly find alternative solutions. As for Russian oil, gas, and coal, we will be able to increase their consumption in the domestic market, stimulate the deprocessing of raw materials, and also increase the supply of energy resources to other regions of the world where they are really needed.
The Russian army reported the complete liberation of the port of Mariupol, which was under the control of the Ukrainian fighters of the nationalist Azov battalion. The spokesman of the Russian Ministry of Defense, Igor Konashenkov, informed that all hostages, including foreigners, were also released in the Ukrainian city. The Russian official emphasized that during the operation, the actions were directed against military facilities and aimed at disabling the extremist war infrastructure. The Kremlin reiterated that the work of its troops remains clear in its objective to defend the inhabitants of Donbass, who were subjected for more than 8 years to harassment, mistreatment, torture, and genocide by neo-Nazi groups sponsored by the Ukrainian government. The United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres warned about the consequences of the Ukrainian conflict for the developing countries.
Charging a three-dimensional crisis, food, energy and finance, that is pummeling some of the world's most vulnerable people, countries and economies. And all this comes at a time when developing countries are already struggling with a slate of challenges not of their making. The COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, and the lack of access to adequate resources to finance the recovery in the context of persistent and growing inequalities. We are now facing a perfect storm that threatens to devastate the economies of many developing countries.
A Chinese foreign ministry spokesman slammed on Wednesday the unilateral sanctions imposed by the United States and its allies against Russia, as the move has failed to solve any problems and only made the whole world pay the price. Spokesman Zhao Lijian made the remarks during a press briefing in Beijing when asked to comment on the price surge of food and other bulk commodities and food security issues since the Russia-Ukraine conflict broke out. The unilateral sanctions against Russia have only put a dent in the languishing world economy instead of solving any problems, the spokesman said.
Countries all over the world already have enough on their plate, as they need to respond to COVID-19 and try to recover the economy. Against such a backdrop, sweeping and indiscriminate sanctions will not only create new irreversible loss, but may also bring shocks to the current world economic system, wiping out the outcome of international economic cooperation for decades, and ultimately forcing the world's people to pay a hefty price. It is neither just nor reasonable and runs against international justice and people's aspiration.
President of the United States, Joe Biden, suffers the lowest approval rating since he took office as president of the country. Polls reveal that only 42% of the population approve of his measures, while 22% of those who voted for him are currently against his policies. Other polling data reveal that 69% of those polled disapprove of his measures after inflation reached at least 7.9% in February, the highest level recorded since 1982. Based on these percentages, there is talk of the possibility of a Republican victory in the next midterm elections, which will be held in November and will renew all congressional seats and more than a third of those in Senate.
Yes, I called it genocide. We're trying to wipe out the idea of even being able to be Ukrainian. And the evidence is mounting. 6 different wars last week, the more evidence is coming out of literally the horrible thing that the Russians have.
We have more news coming up after the final short break, so don't go away. Africa's Health Department reports more than 300 deaths due to flooding in the province of KwaZulu-Natal in the east of the country. President Cyril Ramaphosa met with the families of the deceased and those affected by the rains. The province of KwaZulu-Natal was declared a disaster area as a measure to deal with the situation. According to the executive, the floods destroyed roads and infrastructures in the region. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa meets with the devastated families in Durban after record rains sparked floods and mudslides that killed at least 59 people. Meanwhile, the city begins the task of recovering from rains, with hillsides washed away, homes collapsed, and dozens still missing.
What happened here in KwaZulu-Natal to me, I truly see how very bad this is. What has happened to you all is a very difficult situation, and it is harder than we have seen. What is very difficult is that we have lost the lives of many people and their houses have been washed out. The roads have also been washed out, as well as the bridges. And now this church here also has been affected and washed out. Houses have been damaged, and that has created problems, so we thought we should come here.
Residents of Bambayi Township in South Africa's eastern city of Durban protest against the lack of public services after floods and cut water and electricity. The demonstrators blocked the streets with rubble and burning barricades to demand that city authorities repair damaged infrastructure that left running water or power for days. The previous floods killed 259 people, hillsides were washed away, homes collapsed, and more people were still feared missing. It is considered the heaviest and the deadliest rains in 60 years. President Cyril Ramaphosa described the flood as a catastrophe and promised to spare nothing in dealing with the disaster. Nearly 2,000 people were injured when tornadoes swept through central Texas in the United States as part of a storm system that was expected to spawn more twisters and damaging winds Wednesday. The storm caused widespread damage Tuesday in Salado, about 50 miles north of Austin. Bell County Judge David Blackburn said 23 people were injured, one of them critically. 12 of the injured were taken to hospitals. Tornadoes were also spotted Tuesday in Iowa, but there were no reports of serious injuries. In Lincoln, Nebraska, powerful wind gusts knocked down tree limbs and caused some roof damage. More tornadoes were in the forecast Wednesday for parts of the Mid-South and in the Mississippi River Valley. A possible tornado also caused damage in the small southern Minnesota town of Taopi near the border with Iowa. And 3 consecutive failed rainy seasons have brought on a severe drought in Ethiopia's lowland regions of Afar. Nearly 9 million people are estimated to be affected by the drought, including over 3.5 million children. It is anticipated that the upcoming rainy season will be 20 to 45% less than the average. So for the first time, Ethiopia will have 4 consecutive failed rainy seasons.
I visited 2 IDP sites, and what I have seen is really heartbreaking. I have seen community working 2-3 days before reaching the site, lacking everything.
This drought is the worst drought that we have seen for the last 20 years. It affected the whole community, especially children, especially the under 5 children. So we are getting here a lot of malnourished children, more than the children that we have seen 6 months ago. You know, the number of admissions have increased from 5 patients per day to 15 patients per day.
Cote d'Ivoire's Prime Minister Patrick Aki resigned Wednesday following President Alassane Ouattara's intention to reorganize the government. The Premier expressed his decision for his own resignation and that of the government's 7 ministers and 4 state secretaries to the head of the state during a council of ministers for the confidence received during his administration. Ouattara said that a new prime minister will be appointed within a week and he will have to present a cabinet proposal made up of 30 ministers. Aki was appointed to the post in March 2021 following the death of his predecessor, Amadou Gon Coulibaly, who died of cancer. The Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda signed 2 memorandums of understanding and a concession agreement in the agricultural field. The agreements were part of a series signed during the just concluded 3-day state visit to the Rwandan President Paul Kagame to Brazzaville. Congo will repeatedly grant Rwanda 12,000 hectares of exploitable land in at least 3 departments in the south of the country. However, the duration of the concessions were not specified. Other agreements cover investment protection, mining, management of economic entities, and the strengthening of cultural ties. The World Health Organization Emergency Committee on COVID-19 said that COVID remains a global emergency and encourages countries to keep the surveillance on the virus.
The IHR Emergency Committee met and unanimously agreed that the pandemic remains a public health emergency. They stated their advice and agree that far from being the time to drop our guard, this is the moment to work even harder to save lives.
The virus continues to evolve. We simply cannot afford to lose sight of this virus. It's really, really important. As the virus goes underground, we need to track it because we don't know what comes back.
We have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.
Pakistani